Here we go. Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. This is Paranormal Frequencies. Sherry, tell us who we have.
Tonight we have Marilynn Hughes back. She founded the Out of Body Travel Foundation in 2003. The mission was to reduce spiritual and physical hunger worldwide. Marilynn has written 90 plus books, over 40 magazines, and 15 CDs on out-of-body travel and comparative religious mysticism. These books, along with accompanying music and art, are all available for free download. Marilynn has experienced research, written, and taught about out-of-body travel and mysticism since 1987, has appeared on innumerable radio and television programs to discuss her thousands of out-of-body experiences. She has studied the ancient sacred texts of all major and minor world religions extensively, as well as Catholic, mystical, ascetical, biblical, doctrinal, dogmatic, systematic, 2 words I can't pronounce, moral theology, and individual schools of theology. Anyway, Marilynn, welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be back, Sherry and Jane.
I'm so excited.
Me too. It's always great to be with you guys.
Yes, we love this. So thank you so much for coming back. I could do this with you every night. But
with you every night too. It's like hanging out with a couple of my buddies, you know?
Yes.
It is like that.
Yeah. We feel it and we love you so much. So tonight though, I thought that I wanted to tell the chat room that if y'all have any questions for Marilynn about the out-of-body experience, that you can put them in the chat room, and I'm going to try to keep watch for it. Maybe put them in all caps or something.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
I'll keep an eye out too.
Okay. And then I got I got some basic ones and that I thought that everybody'd like to know, because I'm hoping that we can do this more often with her and get in. I'd love to eventually like cover each one of her books and stuff, but I mean there is 90, so the Marilynn Hughes.
Why not? We could go for it.
I got a good question for you, just to kind of give people an overview of your books. I know you've got the books about Michael Jackson, but are most of your books, the bulk of them, would you say it's just about your out-of-body travels and what you found out information, or is there some how-to in there? How would you divide up your catalog?
That's a really good question. If you don't mind, I'll just go through a quick run-through of the different series I've read. So we have, the first set of books you'll see when you go to the website, which for anyone listening, go to outofbodytravel.org and click on Out-of-Body Books and you can follow with me. The first set of books is the how-to books. And I think there are 9 books in that series. It starts out with Come to Wisdom's Door, and you're going to see all the books are going to move in sequence to help you go to a higher level with each book. There's several books in there, like a lot of people really get excited about the Hammer of Mysticism, and then when you get to the Shining Ocean, the Primordial Seed, and then Fragrance Mysticism. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, a lot of different steps. Different mysteries that you're going to embrace in each volume that it's going to take you to a higher level of the out-of-body experience and how to energize it, and different mysteries within it. Then you're going to be looking at the Mysteries of the Redemption series, which is one of my experiential series. And that has one of my primary texts. When most people come to the site, I recommend that they start with Come to Wisdom's Door and the Mysteries of the Redemption. And then what you have there is a series of books that's going to take you with, from the very beginning stages through these purification, discrimination, discipline stages, and then it goes even further into lots of stuff into, the initiations into evil, the dark side, the afterlife, things like that.
Awesome.
After that, and now I'm kind of just trying to remember in my head here. I think the next one would be, then you're going to go to the 2 spiritual autobiography books that I've written. So there's Evergreen, and Evergreen is a short autobiography of my life so far. And a lot of people like that because it gives them an idea of where I've come from, what I've, how I kind of came out of this mud, and formed in this primordial mud. And then, the second one is called The Aspen, which is a much more, it goes into a deeper, very Buddhist kind of energy, very short book, but very powerful punch in it. And it takes you into an energy, which really helps people to transcend. And I did forget about the series I'm working on right now, which is actually in between those 2, which is the Redemption series. It's different from the Mysteries of the Redemption series. There's 2 books out from the Redemption series, and there's 3 in total with that. And so there's the Limb of the Redemption, which is about the afterlife journey. And it also includes the Western Book of the Dead, which I compiled, and you can either get it in that book or separately. The second one is the Christ of the Redemption, which goes into heavy-duty spiritual warfare. And I'm currently working on the 3rd in the series, which is the Lord of the Redemption. And then after that, you have what's called the Mystical Captive series. And then there's the Solitary series. And these are probably 2 of my favorite series of books that I've written. They go ever into the higher expanding journey of the soul, really into the high mystical spheres. They're truly my favorites. And, both are trilogies. So there's 3 books in each of those sets. After that, you have the Mystic Knowledge series, which has 14 volumes, which breaks out into things like special subject matter, like reincarnation and karma, spiritual warfare, angels and demons, ghosts and lost souls. So there's different volumes on different specific subjects. Then you have the Michael Jackson Afterlife series, which is 3 volumes as well. So you have a trilogy there, which Sherry knows a lot about, which is, the unusual journey that Michael Jackson took me on after his death, through his afterlife for literally 1 full year from the date of his death to literally the date 1 year later, when it was over, when it ended. And wow. So... And then after that, we have some magazines, the Out of Body Travel Foundation journals, Mystics magazines. You can check those out. Then we also have world religion books. So we have The Voice of the Prophets, Wisdom of the Ages, is an encyclopedia of ancient sacred texts, the only one in the English language that I know of. It is 12 volumes, and it's the only one in the English language. It's a very important series of books. You can learn about world religions around the world. Very comprehensive. And then and so I have a lot of different books in the world religion section. Forgotten Mystics, Comparative Religious World Mysticism, Near Death and Out of Body Experiences of the Prophets, Saints, Mystics, and Sages. But there's probably about 10 books in there.
Are those divided up by religion, or does it kind of go into the common threads that run throughout the religion? How is that series set up?
Well, most of the books are divided up in the individual books by each religion. So there'll be there's one book called Selfishness and Self-Will, and you'll have different ancient sacred texts from each religion on what they say about that subject matter.
Oh, nice. That's nice.
Yeah, with comparative religious mysticism, that book I was really interested in finding some ancient sacred texts that I felt were conversational texts from the great masters. So what it has is I worked really hard to find, something from one of the great masters of each religion talking about mystical theology from their tradition. So like sitting down and having a conversation with the master of the mystical tradition in Christianity. I think it was Jacob Boehme I used for that. And then, nice. Different ones for each religion. And so that particular book focuses on conversational, like you want to be like you're sitting there having a conversation with the great mystic. And then, Forgotten Mystics is bringing back to light some of the great work that a lot of people have not heard of because it's been kind of being lost to us through the ages and things going out of print. And so Forgotten Mystics has maybe 30, somewhere around there, Forgotten Mystics that of the past several hundred years that people don't know about, and some of their writings, so that we can bring that back into the body of knowledge. One of my books, Near Death and Out-of-Body Experiences of the Prophets, Saints, Mystics, and Sages, is, gleaning through these ancient sacred texts so that you can actually go back to the birth point of every religion and understand what happened, that the big revelation that caused the birth of every religion, and what was that big blast explosion in the mystical universe. And then, it also goes through what were the teachings of those religions from those prophets on life and death and the afterlife and things like that, so that you can really do a compare and contrast of what do these religions believe, why do they believe it, and get beyond dogma, structure, and just go back to the original revelation. And there's a lot of other ones too. A lot of people like the Teaching Stories book that I have because they like it for their kids, which is a compilation of teaching stories from world religions, that are compiled from different religions that you can teach your children, moral stories, things that have been, we're trying to preserve them through the ages, but there's a lot there. There's probably 10 or so of those books as well. And then you go into the overview series. I think there's about 14 of those. And the overview is a series of books where we're trying to take bigger religious concepts and simplify them for people who just want to kind of get an idea what they are. So, for instance, one of my favorites is the 52 Soto Zen ancestors, and and they're that particular one is an overview of their moment of enlightenment. And the 52 Soto Zen ancestors go all the way back to Shakyamuni Buddha. And it literally focuses on the moment of enlightenment, the transmission of the Dharma, the teaching from the Buddha to the next ancestor, from that ancestor to the next. And so there's 52 of these ancestors, and you're seeing the actual transmission and these transmission moments, which is very cool because you can literally, you can read and you can contemplate, you can meditate upon the exact words, the exact moment, the exact image that gave that person enlightenment at that moment. It's very
that sounds
powerful.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yes, very, very powerful stuff. And then, other things, like, for instance, I have a book on the heresies in the Catholic Church. So it's an overview of the different heresies that had emerged in the church. There's the 22 councils of the Catholic Church. So if you want to learn a little bit about what were all these councils about, what did they each cover? Lots of things on, the miraculous phenomena in the church, the Marian apparitions in the church, fascinating figures in world religion. And that one covers some really, unique, interesting, and different kind of people, who are, basically religious heroes that maybe some people don't even know about. And then, lots of different things. I have a book there on angelology, one on demonology, one on bridal mysticism, which is a favorite subject of mine. Also, there are, Protestant reforms. That's a really big, fat overview book, which probably is a little bigger than an overview book, but yeah. That one went through that one was to give people a basic idea of what are. I wanted to point out the, in the Protestant Reformation, there were these different things that people disagreed on doctrine. Mm-hmm. When I researched this, there were only somewhere between 3 to 5 out of over 30,000 denominations of Christian faiths that were formed because of somebody having a revelation, a mystical experience. Most of them were doctrinal disputes. And so what I do is I talk about the ones that have the spiritual gifts and the reasons for that. But I wanted to point out what were the actual point of dispute that caused the schisms within the churches.
And that's a lot. That's I figured it out. That's a denomination for each bump on the basketball. That's a lot of denominations in the Christian, and one of the things I'd be interested to hear your point of view on this, because you've done research in it, but I noticed that quite a number of them were created because of understanding the writings of Paul differently, like predestination and things like this. So a lot of it seemed to be Paul brought a lot of confusion that churches ended up sort of dividing over. But you're saying there's a number of denominations that sort of maybe the leader of that denomination had some sort of revelation or epiphany or spiritual awakening or experience that they sort of built that sect of Christianity around?
Not exactly. What the irony is, if you look at, like, there's over 30,000 denominations that have emerged, and I don't know what the exact number is now. Mm-hmm. There's somewhere between 3 and 5, and it kind of depends on what you classify as a revelation. And then, but so I'll give you some examples. So we have Joseph Smith, who founded the Mormon faith, who claimed to see the angel Moroni. We have John Wesley, who founded Methodism, who didn't have visions, but he had an acute gift, a gift of the Holy Spirit, where people would be convicted in the Spirit when they were in his presence and heard his preaching. You have Emanuel Swedenborg, who was a 16th century mystic who was prolific and saw amazing. He's one of my faves. In case
shout out to Emanuel Swedenborg.
Yeah, and Off the Left Eye. Yeah, we watched that channel. So
I love Emanuel Swedenborg and love his writings. So there was Emanuel Swedenborg, and of course Emanuel Swedenborg never wanted a denomination to be born of his work, but that's beside the point. So there's Emanuel Swedenborg. Then you had George Fox, who was the founder of the Quakers, and he had some mystical experiences, limited, but he had some. And then you have Seventh-day Adventists. Now you do have others who claim some type of, like, what would be more like in the Catholic faith might be considered interlocutions. Sherry probably knows what I'm saying, where they believe they received insight through the Word of God, so to speak. So this is different than like an out-of-body experience or a mystical experience. It's more of the Holy Spirit coming over them. Some of those would include, like, Mary Baker Eddy, which was Christian Science, Ernest Holmes, who was, I might be mixing these guys up here, because there's the First Church of Religious Science and there's Christian Science. So you've got these two, I'm mixing them up. Ernest Holmes, Mary Baker Eddy. I don't know which one was which anymore, but
who was the lady with the Seventh-day Adventist again? Anne, or what was her name? She would, I think, have seizures or something and visions. The Seventh-day Adventist.
I'm not sure who
you're drawn. Oh, okay. It was sort of an Edgar Casey kind of a woman that would, okay, get visions. I can't think of her name. Maybe somebody in the chat can help me out there. That was one of my stops.
In the Seventh-day Adventist tradition, what was different about them was that they had a tradition of mystical insight. So what they have is, like, if you try to go back and get the accurate accounting of their books, there's a lot of them because they had a lot of people that would receive mystical insight. So you have to get a lot of books together to really get the full picture. So she could have been one of many, but there was also a woman named Ellen White, who I'm not sure which denomination she was, but she wrote a lot of books and did some interesting things and was obviously very inspired. But we have this handful of people who were, and I'm probably missing somebody, so I apologize for whoever I'm forgetting right at this moment. But for the most part, the rest of these breaks from one another were disagreements over doctrine. So, the first schism occurred somewhere around 1038, which was with the Roman Catholic and the Orthodox. And that was over a very minor difference of opinion as to the person of the Holy Spirit. And then you had the Anglican schism, which had to do with Henry VIII and the issue of divorce. And that happened somewhere, in the medieval periods. Then, really the Protestant Reformation did not occur until 1562. We had the rumblings of the Protestant Reformation in the early 1500s. That was when John Calvin came in, like you mentioned, predestination. John Calvin was, he wrote some very, he wrote the Institutes of Christian Religion, and he had some pretty different views on predestination, very different than what we as Catholics believe. I'm Catholic, Sherry's Catholic, and that's what I'm saying.
I'm actually not Catholic.
I did not know that. I'm sorry, Sherry.
No, it's okay though, because I take little bits of, what I was raised Baptist, and then I found Edgar Casey's work. I call myself agnostic Christian, I guess you'd say. I don't know.
Ellen G. White? Yeah, it was Ellen G. White.
From all kind of different people.
Thank you, David.
Go ahead.
Ellen G. White was the one. I was
okay. When you were thinking it was Ellen White, okay.
Yeah, connected with
a lot of really very inspired woman. Wrote a lot of books, and
So back to the Calvinists, because there was a group called Calvinists, but then wasn't there even some denominations with maybe Protestantism, not Protestantism, but Presbyterianism or Presbyterians or.
Protestantism is a blanket term for all of it. So Presbyterian, Calvinism, Methodism, they're all Protestants.
Right. I misspoke. I meant Presbyterian, but you're right. So non-Catholic is
interesting that you could study that many religions and because you weren't born Catholic, but you found this from going out of body and what you experienced.
Ironically,
that is very.
I was raised Mormon growing up, but my family wasn't devout or anything, but I was raised Mormon. And so basically when I grew up, because we weren't devout, I did have some basic ideas from what I was taught as a Mormon. But like I said, we weren't devout, but I was almost like a clean slate of, gosh, I really want to find out the truth. So that's where it kind of began. And it was my journeys that led me to becoming Catholic. And it was experiences that I had with St. Padre Pio and Teresa Newman, two stigmatists from the 20th century that led me to actually convert to Catholicism. And it was a beautiful journey. It was a beautiful journey, and something I never would have expected, for sure.
I didn't mean to interrupt y'all, but I just wanted to point that out, because I certainly, by saying that I wasn't Catholic, didn't want to say that I disregarded it in any way. You know what I mean?
You saw Mother Mary. You saw a statue of Mother Mary.
I've had so many Mary synchronicities since just recently, and I even saw that I had that statue of Mary show up, on that camera and stuff, and it was just really cool. So
I don't think Mary's exclusively Catholic, though.
Yeah.
Oh no, she's not.
No, but
I'm just teasing.
That's important.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, and that's really important, because but it's, for some reason, in a lot of the Protestant denominations, Mary is not given as much importance as in Catholicism. But of course, she's there for all of us, Mm-hmm. And then just going back to, because we're almost done with the Out of Body Books page, so there's some children's books there that are for children, and then there are CDs that people can utilize, and you can use them for meditation and stuff. And there's actually some ancient sacred texts that I've done some compiling and commentary on as well, even on there. So
is the CD music or is it spoken word, or what are the CDs?
well, I have about 15 CDs, and probably about 6 or 7 of them are pretty much Catholic liturgical stuff. So we have like one is called Readings from the Catholic Rite of Exorcism, which is very helpful for people who are trying to do some purification and cleanse themselves. A lot of people really like that one, believe it or not. And then there are other ones like the psalmodies from the liturgical year. It goes through the liturgical year. Lots of these things, but people find them really helpful in their meditations. But I also have like one that I did is called The Frequency of Otara, the Call of the Angels to Out-of-Body Travel. And that one is one that I was taught to do, that I tried to mimic on CD, the sounds of the vibrational raising that the angels do when they're teaching you to experience the out-of-body state and going through the vibration.
I've had that word all the time in my dreams. I didn't even know what it meant.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otara.
Otara.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get that, whatever that one is.
The Frequency of Otara, that's a CD. And yeah, that's the Call of the Angels. And so that's one of those. And then one of the other things on there that people find interesting is I have a 5 CD set that actually goes with the Mysteries of the Redemption, the Out-of-Body Travel Foundation hymnal on CD. But what it is it's a bunch of music that I received in the out-of-body travel state, and I brought it down here, wrote it, performed it, and whatever, produced it. And it's 5 CDs. It has like over 100 different songs, and these songs have the ability to alter frequencies. People use them to help them to prepare for out-of-body travel and to do some shifting.
Very nice.
That's perfect, because let me tell you how funny this is. I gotta read you this first question that I have. You're gonna freak out.
Okay.
Okay. This first question is, can you explain the vibrational state raisings? Could it raise enough in the physical, basically, to send someone out of the physical world and into, those other realms?
Well, if they're sort of, kind of. So when you're talking about vibrational raisings, what you're talking about is that when you are moving towards having an out-of-body experience, you are going into a deep state of consciousness, and your spirit separates from the physical vibration. And so your consciousness separates from the consciousness of the physical body to the consciousness of the spiritual body. The spiritual body has a higher vibration than the physical body. The particles vibrate much faster. So it's like a feeling of vibrating at incredible, massive speeds. So that's what the vibrational state itself is. And so a vibrational raising then is when, as we're progressing through these out-of-body travel adventures, and also as we're moving towards having out-of-body experiences, the angels will often come in, and they will actually, it's almost like revving our engines. They'll come in and they will raise our vibrations. You'll go through these hour-long, literally hours long, not hour-long, usually 2 or 3 hours at a time. And it's very, very intense. And but they'll be raising your vibrations up, so you're like, I'm sounding pretty weird, but doing the best I can.
No, like and at that time, does can you feel like every chakra area in your body, or no, or do you not
you will feel that, but you're literally going to feel every part of your body vibrating. Literally, you feel everything vibrating, and it's going to go on for long periods of time, and that'll happen for long periods of time before and after certain experiences you have. It's done to make it possible for you to go to higher realms, to go to higher and higher places of travel, because we can only go to places where our vibration is actually compatible to the to the realm. If we try to go to a realm where we are not, our vibration is not high enough to go there, it will literally feel like we're being crushed. You cannot go there. It's one of the ways that the universe protects us all from ourselves. We cannot go. So we have to undergo these vibrational raisings in order to become compatible for higher and higher and higher and higher levels of travel, and higher and higher and higher levels of knowledge. And so in one sense, yes, you are becoming compatible to higher realms. You're becoming compatible to higher levels of travel. It's not going to make it so that you just your vibration gets so high that you just drop dead and, leave your body. If that's what the question is, it won't happen in that regard. But what can happen is that you will become more and more compatible to leaving with greater ease as those vibrations continue to be taken higher. It gets easier to separate from the body. It gets easier to get from point A to point, I'm going to say not point B, but point Z. Because when you're first starting out, having out-of-body experiences, you're going to go from point A to point B. Most people think of it from oh, wow, I'm looking at my body from above. Neat, And at some point, you're going to be looking at it from, oh, wow, I am looking at my body from, I'm floating above in the twilight, above in the astral room. Wow, that's really cool. And then that's neat, but that's point C. And then it's oh, wow, I'm floating above my body. And did you know I was taken into another lifetime? Or, and then that's point D. And then, so point Z will be that. So you're going to be moving and moving and moving and moving to higher and higher and higher spheres of existence, closer and closer and closer to the angelic kingdoms and to God. And so as your vibration raises, you are going to be able to separate and move from A to Z rather than from A to B, which would be, so A to Z being, okay, I can get out of my body and the angels can just grab me and take me to the throne room, for instance, rather than just to my bedroom. You know what I mean? And so that's part of the reason and purpose of these vibrational raisings is it makes us compatible to higher and higher experiences. Vibration itself is wisdom. Vibration itself is knowledge. And so these vibrational raisings are also so important because they offer us the ability to understand what we are being taught. And so, we can be told things and we'll understand it to a certain degree, but we will not understand those things fully until our vibrations have been raised to a level sufficient of understanding it to its highest point of understanding. And that's where these vibrational raisings become so important. So it's not going to make you just, your body just fall dead and you're going to die. But it is going to make it so that it's going to be easier for you to move about between worlds. And so, yeah, you'll be able to. And so that's a good thing. There's nothing to be afraid of in that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Cool.
One thing that brought up was I'd heard you on an interview and I thought maybe some people would like to know this, that that there was a difference between the astral realms and that was more like 3D. What are you catching what I'm saying? It was talking about astral travel and out of body experience, a difference.
There's a difference.
First time I heard that.
Was it? Okay. Yeah. Well, the astral realm is actually the fourth realm that overlaps the third, and we're in the third dimensional here. And the fourth realm overlaps earthly reality, which is just a spiritual reality that overlaps earthly reality. And so astral travel, by definition, it's probably not what people mean when they say it, but astral travel, by definition, is referring to traveling in that astral realm. Out of body travel can refer to traveling anywhere. It can refer to traveling in an infinite number of realms of hell, heaven, or purgatory. So above, in the middle, or below. And so it's just a little bit more of a all-encompassing word for traveling in any universe, so to speak, which, you know, a lot of people don't realize that as you start experiencing out-of-body travel, you will start going into this really intensive, multi-dimensional, very infinite universe. It's not just like, oh, there's this one place. It's like there's this infinite number of places, you know?
You know what? I have to tell you really quick, and I wasn't going to say anything because I'm not good at this, and I've never really had this happen before. But while you were talking about all of your books, you know, I kept hearing, it seemed like Michael Jackson kept telling me like humbling, and something about the corner. And then I pictured him sitting in a corner or something. But then I figured out that he was saying that he was humbled to have like his corner in all this big, extensive work that you have because of what it is, your work is, you know?
Well, that's a very moving message from him. I would be very honored. I'm very honored to hear that. Kind of touched.
He's such. It made me like cry while he was telling me, because I could like feel what he was feeling. You know. So
yeah.
weird.
Yeah. I mean, you know, a lot of people. You know, it's funny with the Michael Jackson books because I get a lot of different feedback on that because people love those books when they've read them. People who haven't read them are like, what's it doing there? You know what I mean? And it's so funny. But, you know, what I tell people is if you just take the time to read them and don't think about it as this was Michael Jackson. Just think about it as any soul who's going through, because he had a beautiful journey and we can all relate to it and we can all benefit from the journey that he had in the afterlife. And that's really what it is. And
to show a more modern one than all of these, you know, these ancient, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a totally different journey. A lot of people have told me that they're completely surprised when they do read them because it's totally different than what they were thinking. And, you know, I get it because definitely wasn't what I was expecting to write either. But, you know, it is one of those times that I will always look upon with a big smile and, you know, great gratitude because it was a wonderful period of time. And he was a good friend to me during that period of time in the spirit. You know, I never met him while he was alive, but I do look forward to seeing him again someday, whenever that time may be, probably, you know, when we're all done here and we get to say, hey, let's take a look at what we've done, see if we did okay. Did we do the job right? You know, I often wonder how he's doing with, you know, because a lot of his friends have crossed over now since he has. And I imagine that that's a nice thing for him, that he's probably having some friends that are having some interesting reunions. You know what I mean?
He is a beautiful soul. That's
for
sure.
Mm-hmm. He is. And it was a really special thing. I was very honored to be able to take that journey with him. And so.
Yeah, and it was like your work was such a huge part of me, like losing the fear of it so much because I was so like, you know, scared that it was like a trick or something, even though everything was so positive, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Even people that I've asked will say, you know, for the first thing for him to tell you is that you need to focus, you need to remember who you are. There's no bad message there. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
So it's, you know, anyway. So
I just noticed a little question in the chat.
Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
Just question: what incense, if any, helps in out-of-body travel? Do you use any tools like that, like incense or any?
Oh my gosh, I love this person. I wish I could just take you to my little room there. I love aromatherapy. So I'll just tell you some of the things I love. I use patchouli incense, but I use these hem incense cones. I get them on Amazon. Sorry, I'm going to give free advertising to Hem. They have these wonderful frankincense, myrrh, and they also have, do you have those?
Yes, frankincense.
Okay, and then I also have they have this one called opium, and it is wonderful for meditation. And it's, it doesn't have anything from the, the part of the flower that gets you high, so don't worry about it. It's it's really a good incense for your meditations. I have this one incense. I wish I could remember the name of it. I got it from a store nearby, that really beautiful smell, but I don't know what it is. I also I use a patchouli scented oil. Ironically, the patchouli I use is what I get from Pier 1 for my mist diffusers that I got from Pier 1. I love the essential oils from Pier 1. They are really good. Patchouli is my fave. And then I love certain waxes. I do the scented waxes. So I do lavender, cherry blossom, white hyacinth, blue hyacinth, patchouli, lilac, what's that other one? Magnolia. As you can see, I like the flowers, and thus I wrote a book called Fragrance Mysticism. And the funny thing about that, it's funny. I told a friend of mine about this. I said, one of the reasons I do this is because I have actually found that, a lot of the saints, I don't know if you're familiar with this, a lot of the saints, we've been told there would be smells of roses around them, there would be other beautiful smells around them. In my experiences, like when you go to the bridal realms, the bridal mysticism and the realms of the Lord, there's these beautiful fragrances. And in fragrance mysticism, when I wrote that book, I talked about these ancient sacred texts who spoke about the different ancient sacred texts where they spoke about fragrances in the highest mystical spheres. And what I have found is that it helps me when I want to go from my little grounded bedroom to a higher mystical sphere. It helps to kind of bridge the gap by bringing in these fragrances. It's almost like bringing heaven down closer. And so I find using these beautiful flowery fragrances. I use primarily, the patchouli incense. I use the cherry blossom incense, but also a cherry blossom scented wax. I know I have some others, but those are the ones I love the most. I love the lavender, the lilac, and patchouli is a big one. I wish I knew the name of the one that I've been using that I got from a local store, because it's really a nice one.
Good one.
But
that's cool. I have a quick question. It's it brought to my memory, like when I meditate, sometimes I smell roses, but there's something that happens to me that I'm going to ask you about and see if you know what it could be.
Sure.
It feels like someone's like blowing air on my head and on my hands. Have you ever had that? Do you know what that is?
Yes, that's the wind of the spirit. And so sometimes what you're going to feel is it's just going to be like, let me be weird a minute. Okay, like you'll feel that, right?
Yeah, it feels like literally someone's standing there.
Yeah, it's the wind of the spirit, and it can be the spirit of a particular person, or it can sometimes even be the Holy Spirit. And so yes, that's what that is. And a lot of times it's to let us know someone is nearby.
I've noticed that a few times. It's funny you said that, because I thought, like, what the heck was that? Did the air conditioner turn on or something? It just feels like
smell. Like if you also, like I've had this experience with the scent of the roses, where suddenly you start smelling the fragrances, and there's no reason for it in the area. Yeah. That's when all these things happen. Like, and also along with that, sometimes you feel the shift in the realm. I talk about, some people hear this and some people don't. Like where all of a sudden you go, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I heard that. The realm just shifted. That's when some people will be familiar with this, some people won't. If you hear that, that's that's like God or your guardian angels telling you, take notice of what is happening right now. When you feel that blowing, when you smell that scent, when you hear that shift, the minute it happens, I'll feel a shift. I'm like, okay, what's going on right now? I need to look around because I'm supposed to notice something, you know. And it doesn't mean that you're supposed to notice something supernatural. It may be that something's going on that is important for you to take note of, you know, even if it's just something going on with someone you love, you know, or something. You see what I'm saying?
It might be a cue to go maybe check on your kid or
Yeah,
anything.
exactly.
So is that shift okay? Because I've had it where it's like you know, you get the ear ringing, but I've had it a few times where it's like you get the ear ringing without the ear ringing. If you know what I mean, you feel something happen in your ears, and it's almost like things got quieter. Or is that the shift you're talking about? Is it
Sometimes
sort of
it'll go like
right?
like that.
Yeah, it's like sound changed, but
Yes.
you know, yeah.
And there's a shift. And sometimes you'll hear, like you said, a ringing, and sometimes it's almost like dead silence.
Right. Yeah.
And that's
hearing like a gunshot like going off in your head, like a pop.
I've had that too, and I think that is similar, and that can often be more of like a warning of, you know, like what Shane is saying. Really take notice of what's going on here. This might be a time to go check on your kids, or you know,
right. Okay.
You know, something might be up. You know, make sure your front door is locked. You know,
check the stove, check the iron.
Make sure you didn't do any of the weird, dumb things that I might do, like keep something on. Yeah. So yeah, because and that one, the one where you feel that shot, can sometimes be pretty unnerving, right, Sherry?
Yeah.
And that one is unnerving, and that can be a warning. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's, you know, just, you know, but and it's also like if that happens and you're walking in the dark, you know, maybe approach the corner with a little more caution. You know.
I haven't had the pop yet. I haven't had that. I've had the extreme dizziness, sort of.
Okay.
You know, where it's like my third eye is spinning, or my pineal gland has a vortex around it, and it's almost so dizzy that I have to lay down after meditating for a while.
Well, and that can happen too, because what's happening when the dizzy stuff and that is that you're like becoming in that moment more multidimensional and almost like against your will, because you're and sometimes even to the point, like you said, where you have to lay down, and that can often be almost being called into. We're calling you because we got something we got to do with you. We got to show you something. We got to tell you something. Whether you remember it or not isn't always, you know, the case. But that happens, and I've had many times too where it's like I need to be awake, and it's like, no, that ain't gonna happen. And then I'll go off, and I'm taken to somewhere, you know, really amazing, you know. And it's like, so I've learned over the years that sometimes they're calling you into the mystical because they have something they need to show you. So
I've had those too. You'll like it'll feel like you're hibernating for 20 minutes, and you get up, you're like, why was I so tired for 20 minutes? Maybe you needed a little download or something. I always tell people, I'm like, look, if you feel tired, just go lay down, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know. That's part of surrendering to the spirit in our daily lives that helps us to be more in the flow of receiving. Yeah. Right? I don't mean to interrupt you.
That's one of the questions that I had on there that I thought the audience would like to know was about moving about in the out of body state. Because I know there's some people that like get out of body and they'll just like spin because they don't really realize, you know, how it all operates.
Right, and that's important because we are operating in a totally different environment and a totally different totally different body. And so it's one of the things to just from the top, just to let people know, it can be very weird at first, but it gets very comfortable very quickly. So don't let it throw you off. The reason why it's weird at first sometimes is, first of all, you have to look at the etheric atmospheric world as being almost like a liquid universe a little bit. So you think about swimming, you think about those kinds of things and how it's a different form of existence. The things that you're going to focus on in movement and seeing and hearing, you're going to have to use your powers of perception and thought rather than we don't necessarily function through these physical eyes, nose, ears, and obviously also movement, walking. You have to move through thought. That's the biggest thing. And that's why people will end up waiting, because it's like a watery kind of feeling. And you just like, hey, man, why can't I get forward?
Right.
And that's because it's kind of like a watery, ethereal environment. And you're trying to move as if you're moving from your arms and your hands. The key will be, remember, I need to start thinking. Okay, so you think, I want to go through the window, and then, and of course it may not happen quite that quickly the first few times, because one of the things you're also going to learn is how to actually move through physical matter, because it has a different density. And so there will be some adjustments and training to get through that too. Some people do it real quickly and easily. Other people it's harder. I had some difficulty with it when I first started out, and but I quickly learned. And one of the things you find is that the more you do this, it becomes very natural. It's not so abnormal for very long, as long as you just kind of make these shifts. The other thing, like if you're thinking like, oh, I want to go see my friend, whoever, Bob, you'll almost instantaneously be there right where they are. And so that's how travel is going to occur. And so you're going to start learning to reorient how you move, but you're also then going to want to learn surrender, because you want to surrender to the will of God, because in these travels and experiences, in order to gain the most from them, you want God to direct them, because he knows what you need to learn and what you need to know. And, us as human beings, if we're left to our devices, we'd be like, I want to go explore that little creek. That's what you would do,
That's funny you said that, because I was sitting there thinking, what do I think? King's Chamber, Great Pyramid, and I'm there,
Yeah, exactly. And so,
but that might not be what I need,
Yeah, right. And what we do, and your thoughts are probably better than what my original thoughts were when I first got out, because I'm thinking, I'll go explore a creek, or something like that, But what we don't realize is that what we don't know can hurt us, in the sense of we won't learn what we don't know if we don't allow God to take over. So because God knows everything that we don't know, by surrendering and allowing him to direct the travels, that's how we open up the universe to ourselves, open up knowledge and wisdom, and open up God's love and mercy and direction. And then we see that our little physical, our little human, our little ideas and stuff, we just don't have the ability to even comprehend what God can comprehend for us. I remember in the beginning that was a big deal for me to realize, because this was such a long time ago, like 30 some years ago, where you don't realize that if you don't allow the mystery to unfold itself, how are you going to unfold the mystery? We're not the mystery. We don't, the mystery, I mean, in a sense, we are the mystery, but yet we aren't the mystery, in the sense that we do not have the key to it. So we have to allow God to unfold that mystery, the parts of it that are within ourselves and the parts that aren't ourselves, because the parts that aren't ourselves are so beyond anything we would ever think of. And then even I'll tell you too, another part that is so important is that we have to give God permission to allow us to see things as they are, not how we have believed them to be, and how they are, not how we want them to be. Because
right there.
Because it applies in several ways. One being with just how things work, the mechanics of existence, and how God revealing himself to us, but also very importantly in the nature of seeing ourselves as God sees us and allowing God to reveal ourselves to ourselves, because we cannot truly alter our journey or our path or any of our faults or failings without first seeing it. And so we have to give God permission to let us see. And that's the hard part. That's hard. But it is also one of the most beneficial parts, because you literally are accelerating your journey by being willing to see it. It's uncomfortable for a few minutes, but then it's like, okay, well, at least I know what I'm doing wrong now. And so now,
like a live review or something.
yeah, you don't have to waste so much time just trying to figure out what it is. You get to see it, you get to feel the energetic truth of it, which is so important, because that's where the power comes in for the Holy Spirit to help us to alter that within ourselves. And this is where karmic purification comes in. This is where we really move towards the ability to ascend from this realm, which is why we're here. And so there is a great benefit to allowing God to be honest with us, so that we can truly have the humility to see ourselves truthfully, even though it's hard to do that.
It is. I notice we lie to ourselves more than really anyone, and it's sort of getting to a point where you become honest. But I think, what you're explaining with the out of body really applies to just our journey in general, because I've come to, at first you have all these questions. I got to have this answered. I've got to have this answered or whatever. But you kind of reach this point where you're like, you know what? You tell me what I need to know right now. What's next? What's next? Let's just cut out what I want, because you know what's best. And then you develop this trust. That's what I have. I'm like, I know you know the optimal path for my journey. I'll just trust that you'll reveal what I need to see at this point of my journey, and go from there and sort of get out of the way, because we get in the way so much,
We truly do. And it's really good the way you put it, because we a lot of times too, and I see this a lot with spiritual counseling with people, where all these questions I would ask God, and I'll say, okay, what would you ask him? Just go ahead, ask them as if you're there right now. Let's ask them. Let's ask those questions, and then you really have to ask. Well, and a lot of times people don't really know what they would ask. And then when you really go into the out of body travel state, and you're like, oh, I have all these lofty questions. What's the meaning of life? What's this? What's that? And then God responds with, you're really too selfish, and I need you to do this. It's like, okay, well, I guess right now the meaning of life is that I've got to work on that, or I want you to stop gossiping. I want you to work on, I'm showing you the energetic truth of how you are interacting in a faulty manner, and how you've done so through at least 100 lifetimes, hence. And we want to see if we can get you to actually see this faulty manner, because we'd like you to be able to fix it, so we can focus on what's the meaning of life. And it's like, God is like, I'd rather if you would focus on not using this word when you're doing, what I mean? Because if we could just get you to notice this one thing, we would be able to make so many alterations, and you might actually approach ascension in this lifetime. And that's what I want you to look at as the meaning of your life right now, because we've been doing this an awful long time.
Yeah.
And it's such a big important thing, because people lose sight of how it is these small things, these battles that each one of us has, and we all have the same ones, so none of us needs to feel too bad about it, because we're all here battling the vices and the virtues. But we all have the same thing. We focus on, but I want to know, we have all these lofty things, and we don't realize that actually that God is in the little minute things that he wants us to see. it's in the little pure, Mother Teresa was really good with all these little things. It's the one thing at a time, one thing at a time, the one person at a time, and becoming aware of, and doing the self-examination. This is ironically also a very Catholic thing. The examination of your conscience, the examination of your daily deeds. It's also a Jewish thing, where and a lot of faiths advocate this sort of thing, but this is just a really good practice of really looking closely on where we're heading, why we're heading that way. But this goes into a lot of things that relate to karma, and this could get into a big long conversation, but karma being things that are misunderstood, habitual behaviors that we take from life to life to life to life, that we've created patterns of behavior, oftentimes with patterns of souls that we have not resolved. And that's where God's going to turn our focus back in the beginning. Does that make sense to either of you?
Like, you can think that you're like, I've become non-judgmental because everything that I've ever judged anyone on has happened to me or someone I know or whatever. But then whenever it's broke down like that, in that kind of a thing, they're going to show you, or it's going to be shown to you, oh, but you're still judgmental because even though you think you come so far with something,
yeah,
and then
and then something, and it's like you take care of these things one little thing at a time, and it's like while you're wanting the answer to the universe, it's like, hey, this person here that you haven't forgiven, this is how I see this person, and then it's sort of revealed, you're like, oh, and then you start feeling convicted, you're like, well, I guess I thought I forgave him, maybe I didn't. It's and then but that's the type of thing that you're dealt with, because it's those little things that really hold us back, you know what I mean?
Well, yes, and also because that is the purpose of this particular kind of realm. And so ironically, we talk about what's the meaning of life. Well, what the meaning of life here in this realm has a lot to do with purification. And so, we're coming here to work through these soul configurations that have been muddled over time and centuries by misunderstandings, and things, habitual behaviors and stuff that have conflagrated all sorts of things that have pulled us away from what true eternal love is. And then we have to actually learn what that true eternal love is again. And that's where this energetic truth comes in, because in the mystical realm, you'll be taken in, you see what God's eternal truth is about things, and then you see what your truth is about something. You see energetically the difference, and then you have to work at altering that energetically, and then rectifying it. And so there's a lot of this is the world where good and evil battle, and that good and evil battles around us, but it also battles within us. And there's a lot of good and evil battling going on in our world today. More than in previous generations.
The devil.
What?
Cartoons have an angel and the devil on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really a good, just a good visual, because a lot of times we relate with those voices we hear, and we're not those voices we hear. We're the one observing those voices, like I was just saying in that video we did, So really paying attention to what we're meditating and thinking on all the time is really key,
Well,
being aware,
That's very true. And, you mentioned the voices too, because one of the things that you want to become aware of is listening very carefully, because we do have principalities and powers of both good and evil that do influence our thoughts. And you want to pay attention to the thoughts that are coming in, and you want to identify when a thought is coming in and it's obviously not of your own making. And that happens. And I think I still sometimes am really shocked when something will come in and it's so obviously illogical, and you know that was planted by the enemy. It wasn't one of your own thoughts. You know, we obviously have stupid thoughts all by ourselves. You know what I mean? But I'm thinking about when you have things that are literally implanted that are obviously coming from the dark side. This is where humanity has become very weak and vulnerable. And because we have become less discerning, we do not engage in the actual process of mystical theology, which is what a lot of what I try to teach people to do at my website at outofbodytravel.org. You know, I recommend a lot of people consider reading this book by Father Adolf Tanqueray, which is linked at the website. It's called The Spiritual Life. It's a treatise on mystical and ascetical theology. And this is a process that's been used for, you know, thousands of years, which is literally the process of purification, discrimination, and discipline, which is how we learn how to purify our interior, how we learn to discriminate between good and evil, and how to then discipline our minds. And because this has been kind of like set off to the wayside, we have become such easy prey for these little people on the shoulders, you know, that we just easily get swatted off into, you know, into the dark mist without even a second thought. And it's very important that we do not get swatted off like that and so easily. A lot of my members have been having visions about the coming darkness and the times that we're experiencing. A lot of spiritual warfare is going on around the planet right now in regards to the fact that people are too easy prey. People are giving in too easily and just literally hurling themselves over the cliffs, so to speak. We have to put in the effort, and we have to spiritual life is work. It requires discipline. It's not something, it's just a, you know, nice hobby. You know, it's something we actually have to work for, something we have to pray, meditate, and we have to actually do the spiritual reading, the study, and we have to, that's why the prophets, saints, the mystics, and the sages are so important, because these are the ones who inform our conscience. And without informing our conscience, we cannot possibly discern. And that's why they're so important. And we've lost a lot of that, but we can regain it. We can totally regain it, re-energize it, and bring it all back. It's just that we have to recognize its value. God knows its value. And as long as God knows its value, we should denote its value as well. He's the one who's literally, in the mystical experiences I've been having, it's so very important that we restore that which has been lost. We have to do that. We have to restore it. And so, you know, and this restoration, it comes about on many levels. You know, we have to restore that which has been lost within our own souls. We have to restore that which has been lost within our world, within our societies, within our families. We have to restore that which has been lost within our cultures, within our faith, and even within our tradition of mystical theology, within our traditions of the ancient sacred texts. We have to honor what is honorable again, instead of throwing it all away. And literally, the way I put it, with my spiritual counseling clients, I'll just give you a little taste of that. I'll pull out the certain things and like, okay, I want you to pull out your gold here. This is your gold. And we're going to work with your gold. And I want you to visit your gold every day, because that's where your gold is. And we have to remember the gold is still here. It's in the ancient sacred texts. We don't want those things to be lost. That's the gold. That's the true value. That's what has been left behind for us, that it contains within it the key to our ascension from this realm to God. And so many of us are not listening. And we have to stop doing that. We have to just, kind of shut up and listen, Get real quiet, and let God speak to us again. Sometimes we forget. I think about this a lot, and I'll just give this to you as something for us all to meditate on. I'm kind of talking a lot.
No, you're good. You're good.
But we forget. Even just I'm probably older than both of you, but just 20 years ago, the world was a much quieter place. Think of how many devices have come into play just in the last 20 years. Think about 20 years before that. And then I think about, well, what was the world like? How quiet was it in the 1800s?
Yeah.
St. Padre Pio was really not happy when they invented the television in the 1960s because he was afraid families would stop spending time together. But what's happened is that people have lost the idea of listening to the silence. I read an article on a scientific study done recently where they actually found that silence is absolutely essential to the healing of the human brain, that we will go insane if we do not allow our brains to experience silence. Now think about the life in just the 1800s when there were no devices, no television, and you lived in a nice little homestead or something, and in the evening there was no television, and you just kind of, think about it. Think about the silence that we no longer have. So we need to recreate that for us each individually in our homes. We have to turn the devices off, and we have to intentionally allow God through again. Because in some respects, isn't that what the dark side really wants, is to cut us off from that ability to communicate with God?
That's why I say there's such a push against all of those things,
Yeah.
Yes. And the other thing about that too, there was another study that was shared with me recently about the attention span of our children and also of adults in our age bracket, where it went from like 13 seconds in the year 2000 to 8 seconds in the year 2008. And I think it might be lower as of 2014. So the attention span, you need to look at that, because if human beings can no longer focus, what does that do to our ability to communicate with God? We can't. So we can't allow that to happen to us or our children or to humanity. We have to reinstitute communication with divine, and we have to do it whether anyone else chooses to do it or not. We have to recognize these are all parts and parcel of what is going to help any of us to achieve out-of-body travel or have mystical experiences. It's silence. It's being able to focus, disciplining our minds. It's all of these things, the purification, discrimination, the discipline. It's the spiritual reading, the meditation, the prayer, the ancient sacred texts, which are the gold. Hold on. The gold. And we have to remember that that's really what it is. That's the gold. It really is the gold. Just for your listeners, I'd like them to think about this for a moment. Who would have thought? I'm just going to take a random prophet from a long time ago. Let's take Guru Nanak, who was the founder of the Jains, or was he the Sikhs? I should have chosen one that I was sure of.
We'll get the point.
But anyway, Guru Nanak had some ancient writings, and it's in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. And I think it's think it's a total of 4 volumes. I think I've got 3 of them. And he lived probably, I'd have to guess, but a long time ago. How valuable. This is a great master who began one of the great paths of spiritual purification and one of the great paths of atonement and ascension of all time. How valuable really is it to know what he said, to know what he experienced? How valuable?
Very.
And it's available, but do you know that when I spoke to the publisher of his writings, they told me that I was the first person to purchase a copy of that book in 2 years.
Wow.
And so what does this tell us? And I hear this from publishers that I've bought ancient sacred texts from. We know they're out there. We know they're gold. But for some reason, people are not seeking the gold.
Because everybody's keeping up with the Kardashians.
Well, don't you think it's like we're reached that time, like that was mentioned in Daniel, that people will run to and fro and knowledge will increase? I mean, I've been noticing not only are you helping get this stuff out, but other authors like Matthew LaCroix is printing all of this old stuff, into modern print where it's more accessible to people that, where it hasn't been before. So I do see this increase in knowledge, don't you?
Yes. And, the internet, this is one of the great benefits of it. And ironically, it was, don't remember his name, but there's a website called sacred-text.com. The man who founded that passed away several years ago, but he put a bunch of excellent ancient sacred texts on that site, and people can read them for free. And so that's really excellent. A lot of people don't know that we have so many things available to us. Like for instance, we have the writings with the exact instruction that Christ gave to the apostles for the Christians and for people who wanted to follow Christ. It's in the Didache. It's right behind me. We have, what's in the apostolic constitutions, we have the exact things that Christ told the apostles he wanted us to do. We have the exact words of the Buddha in the Pali Canon that he told the people, this is how you achieve enlightenment. Over 200 volumes, but we have it. We have these things, and so this is kind of what I would like to really impart the passion of the gold to your listeners, that we have it available to us, and it is gold, and that's where the gold is. That's where the value is. These are the mysteries that people want to know. They want to know, how did they do it? It's available. It's there.
Now, which book was it again that did the 52?
It's the 52, the oral transmissions of the 52 Soto Zen ancestors.
Okay.
Overview. It's an overview. Yes. And yeah, gosh, I wish I could just put my library on.
So amazing that you've, read all that stuff and retained it all. You know what I'm saying? God.
Another interesting one too. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but there's Earth Store Bodhisattva. There's the Past Vows of Earth Store Bodhisattva, a very old Buddhist text. He was a Buddhist monk who traveled to the hell realms and helped souls to escape from the lower realms. Mystics have done this for centuries, for eons. This is nothing new. It's as old as time. And here you have someone from, I think it's a couple thousand years old, if not at least 1,000 or something. And this guy, helped me to understand what was happening to me now, So we have gold everywhere.
Right here in front of us.
Yeah.
Well, it's been amazing. Marilynn, did you have any more questions here? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that David Castle in the chat said that you have a piece of God the Creator in you. He lives in your pineal gland. And I think it's very interesting that in the anatomy of the brain, if you like turn it upside down and look at it, it literally looks like the throne of God with the 24 elders, like the 24 cranial nerves.
Yes, very well said.
I would just like to tell everybody, or if I was going to leave everybody with something, one thing that just changed so much for me was a video called The Throne Room by Edgar Casey. It's about 7 minutes long, and that was when I started seeing all of the links to the anatomy and physiology is almost like clues to everything, in the body. That's why I always tell everybody that the earth is shaped like an eyeball, because I think that it is. That's a whole nother show.
That's fascinating. I didn't know there was a video like that. I'll have to look that up. But that's a very
yeah. It's really neat.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, the parallels between the physical human body and the cosmos. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm hanging on to the rest of these questions because we're gonna have to do this again. We can get you to come on a lot, if you.
Yeah, we can do it as much as you want, girl.
That's awesome. Because I mean, we could go so many different directions with 90 minutes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It blew by. It's been an hour and 21 minutes. I'm like, wow, it's already been an hour and 21. Gosh, I could easily go 2 or 3 times this, no problem. We're having a blast here.
Yeah, it's really fun talking to you guys. Like I said, it's like hanging out with buddies,
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Then we got everybody in the chat that's hanging out. So yeah, just one big love fest, I guess.
Yep, love fest for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Marilynn, and thanks for Sherry for getting her here again. And it's been a blast. Thank all of you guys in the chat and watching this later. Lots of love to you. We'll have Marilynn back soon.
Thank you guys. It's great being on and great to see you guys again.
Yes, everybody read David Castle's last comment.
Yeah, and I also have Marilynn's links below. You can find her website, outofbodytravel.org, is linked below, as well as her YouTube channel.
Thanks, Shane.
Awesome. All right. Lots of love, you guys. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Bye.
If you'd like to support the work I do, go to paypal.me/UOTF. Thanks.